in exchange for protecting them during the night and giving them an access point into the city later on, she gets the promise of safe protection for herself, her family, and all of their households. And so then the spies go back to the camp, and they come in and sneak back in, and they know not to destroy Rahab's place because she puts a crimson cord out the window. And I was thinking about it, and this is kind of like, it echoes the Passover.
Yes, it does.
That the lamb's blood above the door, crimson cord above the door, which is just a really cool thing. I told you there'd be echoes. Hear them?
Can you hear it?
And they're subtle. So that's the story of Rahab. And
where does Rahab show up in the New Testament?
She shows up in the lineage for
Strangest
Jesus.
place in Matthew's genealogy.
Yeah.
She's one of Jesus's great, whatever it is, grandmothers, cousins, whatever. So, yeah.
Yeah.
No small person.
No, and
Rahab.
and it indicates her importance to the Hebrews as part of their history.
So a Canaanite prostitute is part of Jesus' family.
Yeah.
That is a striking
that's usually
thing to mark.
I think a lot of people want to cover up if their great-grandmas were prostitutes and foreigners.
But not Matthew.
But not Matthew.
Yeah.
And especially when you think about in Judaism, your birthright is passed through the mother. Like, you're Jewish through your mom, not through your dad. So it's really saying something. It's indicative of how it should be an inclusive religion and an inclusive faith that people can enter in even if they're not necessarily born into it.
And we'll see it again with Ruth.
We will.
Another story that you need to know from Joshua is the battle of Jericho. The Joshua Battle of Jericho. Sing it with me.
Jericho.
Okay.
Is that from an Andrew Lloyd Webber?
That is not that I'm aware of. But I could probably find a connection. So the story of the battle, I keep wanting to say the Battle of Jericho, is they have this strong-walled city of Jericho, and as long as there's a strong-walled city, there will always be defense coming from there, and you'll never be settled in that land. So the Israelites have to take it. But instead of a frontal assault, and they take their swords and their just go fight it. God speaks to Joshua and says, no, don't fight it in a conventional way. Go and circle the city 6 times, I think it's 6 days, and then on the 7th day, take the priests and then take people with trumpets and circle the city 7 times. And then at the end of that, blast the trumpets and everybody shout. And if you do that, the city walls will fall. And they do, and that is exactly what happens in the story. Meaning for this story, a lot of people today think about how do we interact with the culture around us. And I think half the time we're embarrassed by how religious people behave. I know I am. It's bellicose, it's argumentative, it's violent often, it's intellectually violent.
Yeah.
And part of what I like in that story is the sense of rather than attacking the city with weapons and going at it in kind of an assault mode, it's the sense of circle it, use musical instruments to blow, and then use shouting, almost a jubilant kind of shout of joy. And it's in these ways that walls begin to come down. That image breaks down a little bit because, of course, it is a conquest. But I know many my urban pastors, use this image of the Battle of Jericho to talk about how to be ministry in an urban context.
Right. It's about winning hearts and minds.
Yes. And not force.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think we can see that in not only in ministry applications, but just with in relationships, when you're with that person who's kind of hard and you guys don't know how you're going to be able to talk. Well, you don't start to communicate through fighting. You see this on international relationship scales, that diplomacy is much better than shooting.
So the third story is the Nehemiah household. Very famous.
This is like the famous quote that I learned this quote because I did a cross stitch when I was like 15 and gave it to my Bible school teacher.
This is the number one bathroom text.
Really?
Yes, Christian households you go to, you will go in and there will be either in the hallway or even sometimes in the bathroom, there will be a nice kind of counter cross stitched or little artistic thing. As for me and my household, we
will
worship the Lord. Yeah,
we will serve the Lord. And that nice little gem of a verse is found in Joshua 24 verses 14 through 28. People are, and this kind of is indicative of the larger narrative that's going on in Joshua, where things start to break down a little bit as they're coming into contact with other cultures. And so at this point, Joshua is with all of the Hebrews, and they're like, well, let's do this and let's do that. Like, let's serve this local god or that local god. And Joshua stands up and says, no, as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord. And that's really important for the context in which it's being written. Because again, they are in kind of a point of desolation, and there's lots of foreign influences going on. And King Josiah is all about reclaiming their heritage, their identity as a covenant people. So when Joshua is saying, as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord, I think it's more Josiah saying, as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord.
One of the things that I love about, I've always loved about this text is the first part of this is choose this day who you will serve.
Yeah.
Choose. You know, this is, again, I think modeling how do we be people of faith who we can make choices and live amidst the people that you know are not always going to walk the same pathways that we do.
Yeah.
We say, look, these are the choices we're going to make. Make your own, and then let's figure out how to live together.
Yeah, in this passage, there's no condemnation for the people who don't choose to serve the Lord. Like, and it's not like, I'm doing this, peace out, see you later. It's very much like, this is what I'm doing. You guys figure out what you're doing. Yeah. And I love that too.
Yeah.
So, any oh, you... Oh, no.
You know, well, no, I would just say I think Joshua's a tough book. Especially for Christians who we are used to. Jesus who says, love your enemies, don't shoot them and put them to the sword.
Please don't.
Joshua's a hard book because the whole context is military conquest and moving into a land and putting people to the sword. You know, it's certainly not my favorite book, but I think part of what I do like about it is that in the hardness of the reality of an ancient world where warfare that was the reality of the day.
It's the expected.
Yeah.
That's your foreign relations.
It is.
Yeah, there's no such thing as diplomacy yet.
And yet they find God even in the midst of that. Even in these really hard places that, you know, the family's family. Who battles? Who fights like family does?
Yeah.
But the sense in Joshua that even in fights like that, when you're fighting with your family, even there, you can have experiences of God. So that's the only way I can think of to make it a little palatable.
Yeah, we kind of glossed over some of the hard issues.
But read it and tell us what you think.
Yeah, come with questions for Ken.
Thanks.